Welcome back to my channel, guys. I'm so excited to share this Christmas pattern with you. If you're wondering why I sound a little bit like a horse, it's because I'm getting over a cold and I didn't want to put this video on hold anymore. That way you have time to make it for Christmas. Let's talk for your materials. You're going to need worsted weight yarn in light brown, green, and red. I personally used Line Brand's Made with Love, the Cottoney one, and that's a 60% cotton, 40% acrylic, which is really nice to work with. And then you'll also need a small amount of finger weight yarn for the nose, the eyes, and the blush if you decide to include it in the blush. For your tools, you're going to use a 4mm G hook, and you'll need, of course, your stitch markers. I suggest a blunt needle, fiberfill for stuffing, and scissors. Additionally, for this project, you'll need a 4mm macrame hoop. You can get these at your local craft store. I think I paid $1.79 Canadian for mine. You'll need jump rings in 6 and 4mm, as well as tools to be able to hold them and open them up. You'll need 2 12mm jingle bells, and then you'll need makeup for the blush, to paint the ears, and to paint the snout. You're going to start by making a magic circle and making 6 single crochets in that magic circle. I'm going to leave the instructions for each round as we come to them in the top left-hand corner. I'll also leave timestamps in the description so you can move to whichever part you need to in the pattern. If you guys are interested in me actually making the PDF version of this pattern, let me know in the comments down below. Sometimes I just don't know if it's worth it to also make the PDF version, but if this is something that you would like to purchase for a small amount to be able to have on hand, let me know in the comments and then I'll get working on that. Before we move on, I'm going to create a spot in the top of the head where I can put my jump ring later, because otherwise it won't be completely centered if I don't do this. And this is totally optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want. I'm just such a perfectionist. I really want it to be right in the middle So use that tail end or use an extra end if you want to create that center at the very top of the head. And you know what? You could even be more time efficient than I am being here, and you can actually thread the yarn through your jump ring before you actually close it off as I'm doing here. That will probably save you some time. Once you do that, you can weave the tail end back in on the inside of the head. For round 9, we want to make sure we're not working into both loops like I'm showing you here, but you want to work into just the front loop. Just that one. And you're going to work the whole round just in the front loops. When it comes time to work your decreases, I strongly recommend an invisible decrease, which means you work into the front loops only of the next 2 stitches to make your single crochet. To close off, we're going to take a blunt needle and we're going to thread it through the front loops only of all of the remaining stitches. Once you've done that, you can pull your end to close the circle. If you want, before you weave in your end here, you could thread the jump ring through your yarn right now to save time later. We're now going to use pins to place where our ears will go, and that's going to be between rounds 3 and 4, directly on the sides. Now you're going to go ahead and attach your yarn where you marked off, and you're going to chain 1. So attach your yarn like this, chain 1, and you're going to make the ear in that same stitch where you attached your yarn. So all of the steps above are going to be made in that same space. As we weave our end, we're also going to use that to help position our ear into a more firm place. So I chose to slant it slightly downwards. You can do it differently if you want, but that's what I did. Then you can thread both ends out the same gap, tie them together a couple times, and then weave them inside the body. Go ahead and repeat the same thing for the opposite ear. We're going to go ahead and start painting our capybara. Now I know some people don't like to use makeup, so you're also free to use paint if you prefer. And I started off with my ears first, that way I could get a feel for the makeup and how it looked on the yarn before I went ahead and made the snout. Before I paint my snout, I'm going to mark off with pins where I want it to go. So it's going to go from the bottom of round 9 to the top of round 14. So I just marked off round 9, and now this is round 14. So I just wanted to hit the very top of round 14 and to hit the very bottom of round 9. Start off from the middle and then work your way to where the pins are that you placed. Now what I'm doing here is rounding out the corners because I don't want it to look too much like a square. We're going to go ahead and make our eyes, but before that we're going to pin where they're going to go. So directly beneath the ear at round 9 and about 2.5 stitches wide. You're going to bring your yarn in through the back and weave it across to where you marked off. If you brought both ends out the same gap in the back, you can tie them a couple times and then weave them back in the body. Now we're marking where our nose will go, and the top part is going to be between round 9 and 10 and 4 stitches wide. So bring your yarn in from the back and out the front and weave it across to the opposite part where you pinned. The vertical line is going to come out of round 14, right in the center of the snout. So I just marked that off there. Bring the needle out through that part you marked. And then it's going to go over the top strand and in between rounds 10 and 11. And that will bring the top horizontal line of the nose down slightly into a V shape. You might want to adjust the nose by pulling both the start and the end of the yarn so that you have equal tightness all across. This is optional, but you could use a little bit of pink yarn to add blush lines at round 10 beneath the eyes. We're going to go ahead and attach our green yarn to our hoop. And I will mention that it might feel a little strange when you do this. The first couple single crochets will feel a little odd, but after you have 2 or 3 down, it'll feel normal and you'll be able to crochet all the way around with no problem. You want to repeat this about halfway across the hoop, and then we're going to make 2 strands in red. Before we make our red strands, we're going to thread our jingle bells into our yarn. Now the next slip stitch after our last green strand, we're going to finish it in green. And the second one, we're going to actually finish it with red, so we can make the next 2 strands in red. We're going to make our red strands just like we did our green ones. So we're going to chain 7, but before we continue, we're going to slide our jingle bell right down and close to our hook, and then we're going to continue to single crochet 3 in each chain all the way across down the chain. Now as you make the next 2 slip stitches before making your second red strand, I suggest that you carry your green strand with you and crochet over it. Now that you've finished your second red strand, the next slip stitch you make, you're going to make with your green strand. And now you'll continue to make strands as we have been all the way across the remainder of your hoop. And you can go ahead and cut that red yarn. I ended up having just 1 single crochet left before I reached the very first slip stitch I made. So it's not a big deal. Don't worry about having just 1 slip stitch in between the strands at the end here. So what I did here was make 1 slip stitch at the end of my last strand, and then I attached with a slip stitch to the first single crochet that I made. Cut your yarn leaving a long end that you'll use later to create a loop so that you can hang your wreath capybara. Hold your wreath from the end strand to make sure that it is centered. If it isn't, you can weave it a little bit across, left or right, whatever you need, so that it is centered. And then you can weave in your end, leaving a loop at the top that you can use for hanging. Before we add our capybara, we just want to make sure that all of our strands are turned outwards and the single crochet border is on the inside. We're going to use our 4mm jump rings now to attach our capybara. You can use 2 at the top or 2 at the bottom, and you might have to adjust this as needed depending on how big your cappy is. You might need less or more. And use a blunt needle to find the center of the wreath at the bottom and to insert the jump ring in there. And once you've attached your jump rings, your Wreath Christmas Capybara is finished. So, what did you think? If you like this pattern, please leave a like and subscribe for more. I have some exciting new patterns in the works to share with you guys.